Let us ask what curious scenes Heidegger can point out to us amidst what we took to be obvious. Let's take a closer look at the text. There's a error I have to point out in what I've said before. This is not the second essay in Thoughts Out of Season, the essay on the use and abuse of history. It's the first essay in the second volume of Thoughts Out of Season, so it's the third essay overall of the essays Nietzsche wrote about right after the Franco-Prussian War. While he was a professor, he was involved in the war in some way in the ambulance corps. So Heidegger makes a series of remarks, not on the preface, where we just in the previous one of the previous recordings we spoke about the last two generations where the Prussian historians became a professional class under the House of Hohenzollern. In passing, I mentioned that Lord Acton reviewed a book by one of those professors, and Acton was a Catholic, and he didn't. His mother was a German, but he was out of place in Prussia, in the German Empire, and he was also out of place in England. And he made the somewhat nasty remark that these Prussian professors don't blush to say they're in the service of the House of Hohenzollern, and this in some way rhymes and echoes with what Nietzsche's saying in his other essays, where he's saying the Germans don't know what culture is. They think that they won the Franco-Prussian War, but they're actually getting soaked in the light of the French. And this comes out much later on in the Weimar. If you read Walter Rathenau, he's saying nobody wanted this constitution, nobody wanted the Weimar Republic, nobody wanted all these French innovations, but they came anyway. So we have here at the beginning of the essay proper, the use and abuse of history, these sort of biblical tone, a kind of stately, non-rhetorical prose. He doesn't suggest things according to the idea of rhetoric you have in the rhetorical syllogism in Aristotle, but he just states things like the King James Bible does. Consider the herds that are feeding yonder. They know not the meaning of yesterday or today. They graze and ruminate, move or rest from morning to night, from day to day, taking up with their little loves and hates and mercy of moment, feeling neither melancholy nor satiety. Man cannot see them without regret. So now there's some question of what's Heidegger doing. What is this going to the text? So he's making a series of remarks we have these kind of lecture notes. We don't know exactly what Heidegger said in his seminar, but the lecture notes have a series. In the beginning, they have a series of parenthetical statements, which seem to be statements that go out beyond what's actually in the text. He mentions what's being said in the text, being absorbed in the present, not knowing what is today. These are remarks in from the Heidegger seminar on this essay. The human beings. Let's see what else he says. He makes a series of remarks that are basically paraphrases of what's in the text, or sort of his the shrinking of what's being said. But then he also makes these little parenthetical remarks. He says, so to the remark, not knowing what is today or what is yesterday, he adds in parentheses, quote unquote, we do not, quote unquote, know that either, explanation point. So he goes beyond so it's as though something were to be inferred from the text. So is he staying with the text? What does the text actually mean here? So what does the subject matter actually mean? Is the subject matter the mind of Nietzsche? Is the subject matter a concept unknown to Nietzsche, which is the history of being? Is that what he's looking at? What are we looking at? Is he looking at the a biological treatment of animals from the point of view of British empiricism, or what? So we have another remark about the human beings, to which he adds, the human beings envy. So the human beings, quote unquote, envy. Heidegger glosses what Nietzsche's saying, and Nietzsche says directly that the human beings envy the animal, and Heidegger glosses this, saying, we cannot make he cannot make himself happy by his own efforts. So why should the human being envy the animal? Because through the whole efforts of the last, let's say, 35 generations, going back to Plato, we haven't been able to make ourselves happy through the rise of reason and science. So there's additions to the text are being made here, you could say, in a certain way. Are these simply clarifications of what's already there, or are they additions? The third one is much more of an addition, although it ties in with what Nietzsche says in his later works, when he studies Locke and British empiricism and the primary and secondary qualities, and the so-called concept of the sense data, by which data comes to our eyes and it, quote-unquote, excites something within us. So Heidegger is aware of what Nietzsche did later on, and there's a sense that he's bringing that into the text. Because he says, he mentions here, so Heidegger mentions here, it's not simply that the animal is there. He says in his parentheses, and yet in every animal something, quote unquote, prior, that which always and already reigns. In every animal something, quote unquote, prior, that which always and already reigns, and he adds in parentheses, e.g. instinct. So trieb in auf Deutsch. So Heidegger is writing this in 38, 39. He must be aware of Freud and Freud's treatment of the so-called drives, the instincts. You don't have to translate it instinct necessarily. That brings it directly into this biological thinking. You can translate it as impulse, which makes it sound more like a psychological issue. We talk about impulse buying. What does that mean exactly? Suddenly you find yourself doing, and I think of Kant, who talks about the spontaneous evil, the true evil. You have all your intentions in one way, and then suddenly you see the face of somebody you hate, and you hit them or whatnot. There's spontaneous impulses can come out of nowhere. And the British empiricist, Professor Iman says something that's just useful, which is, he says the Anglo-sphere is thinking constantly in terms of British empiricism. So let's see here. So we have this instinct is coming into the text, and it has a big complex of ideas around it, and the word is not in Nietzsche's text. It's not here, but the subject matter seems to suggest it in some way. All right.